You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hi guys, and thanks so much for coming back again to Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. This week, sponsored by Terry Kidder, a Young Living independent distributor. More about Terry and Young Living in a moment, so stick around, because you may be surprised at what Young Living can offer you, the hiker. We've got another couple on the show this week, and unusually these are a mother and daughter who are still on the trail. They haven't been fast, starting back in March, but they have had a blast. I wanted to talk with them before they got to the end, and I actually met them when I was going through Maine earlier this year. Peaches and Woodstock will be on soon. This week, for our middle section, we're back with the hostels that I stayed in and enjoyed on my through hike this year. One that hadn't been around when I went through in 2014 was Boots Off, just off the trail as it comes down into, or just outside of, Hampton, Tennessee. I'd heard about Boots Off from my buddy Bruce Matson when he stayed there in his through hike in 2018. He was very complimentary of the place, and I'm glad that I tried it out. Jim Gregory, the owner of Boots Off, tells us about how the hostel came to be and the various services that he offers. Jim will be after Peaches and Woodstock. Finally, Paul Stutzman's book, Hiking Through, takes us to just outside Harpers Ferry, the traditional halfway point of the AT, putting in a marathon day, literally, as he makes his way over the dreaded roller coaster. If you've ever done the roller coaster, you'll know what a mission that is. Just before we move on though, as I mentioned earlier, we actually have a sponsor this week. I didn't know what to think when I heard about Young Living essential oils, but listen to this. You'll be surprised as I was. Do you think your pack has everything you need? Think again. Get prepared for the upcoming hiking season by stuffing your stocking with Young Living essential oils and products. Whether it's Panaway oil to soothe those aching feet, or all-natural bug repellent without the chemicals, coconut oil-based lip balm, or a boost to your brain power with Ningxia Nitro. Young Living can meet your needs. You'd be surprised by the number of things that Young Living essential oils has for you as a hiker. Terry Kidder, the sister of our very own Jester section hiker, can help you this holiday season. For more info on how to get your very own basic essential oils hiker pack or a gifter pack to your very favourite trail lover, text the word hiker to 937 848 1630. So send them a text and you'll get a response with details of how to order. I tried it out myself, and in a few minutes I had a response from Terry with clear instructions. Even better, if you have more questions, you can simply reply to a text and she'll help you further. Thanks very much, Terry, for sponsoring the show. Let's hear now from this week's main guests, a mother and daughter pair, Colleen and Julianne Davis, or Peaches and Woodstock. I'd like to introduce you to another couple of through hikers who are still on the trail. This is Colleen and Julianne Davis. Hi, ladies. How are you?
We're great. How are you?
I'm all right. And you are you're Peaches and Woodstock. Who's who?
I'm Peaches, Colleen. I'm the mom.
Okay.
And I'm Woodstock.
Okay. So you're a mother and daughter combination, really, or a father and son combination, even though we had one recently. It's kind of relatively rare from my experience. What it made you think that you'd be good hiking partners together?
We have pretty similar personalities and we get along really well. You know, there's, of course, the mother-daughter bond, but we're also very good friends as well.
We were best friends before we got out on the trail. So it was kind of an easy decision.
Has that been tested on the trail, though?
A little bit. We bicker occasionally, but I think if anything, our bond has just grown stronger. Yeah. I don't know how you could. I think either one or two things is going to happen when you do something like this. Your bond's either going to grow stronger, or you're going to end up
killing each other.
Yeah, exactly.
That was my thought, actually, the killing each other bit. I would suspect that would be quite testing. So, is one of you the leader, or do you actually work everything out together?
I would have to actually give the leader position more to her, to Woodstock, because I'm kind of like I'm the slow one. I lollygag. It takes me forever to get ready in the morning, and she figures out our logistics a little bit more than I do. So I'd have to give that spot to her.
And yeah, I guess the protective instinct kicks in from time to time, doesn't it? Does that make you sort of reassert yourself in that situation?
Absolutely. Being two females out on the trail, you always have to be aware. And anytime that she's either ahead of me or behind me, I'm always kind of on high alert. A perfect example, yesterday we passed someone who was obviously hunting on the trail.
Wow.
And she was behind me, and I slowed up because I was like, I don't want her back there with someone with a firearm by herself. So it definitely kicks in from time to time.
I'm sure. I actually hiked the Camino de Santiago in Spain last year with my niece, Emma. And even though she's a 43-year-old grown woman, mother of two kids, I felt totally the protective one. And in fact, she would hike about 100 yards ahead of me, but she would never be behind me. I'd always want to make sure I knew exactly where she was. And it's almost like a natural transition, isn't it? You kind of go into that, the person who looks after the other person.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you're doing a Sobo flip-flop, as I understand it. Tell us what that is and why you decided to hike that way.
So we originally we were going to do like the traditional northbound hike.
Yep.
We started in Georgia on March 26th, and we quickly found out that we were very slow hikers. We had plans to get off trail for about 3 weeks for a few weddings that we had to go to. But I think, this was pretty much our very first backpacking trip. We had no idea what we were doing.
Yeah.
So it took us a little bit of time. Once we got to Angel's Rest in Virginia, we decided that we were either going to bounce up to New York and hike with the northbound bubble or just flip up to Katahdin and hike south. And I think eventually we just made the decision to go to Katahdin and hike south. And I think it was a pretty good decision.
Yeah, definitely.
So where did you go to? That was actually in Petersburg, in Angel's Rest you went to, was it, when you decided to do that?
Yeah.
Okay. So but the choice was because of your speed. Is that right?
Yes.
Well, that and the fact that my son got married and then my best friend's daughter got married. So we had to take 3 weeks off of the trail.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, it's about 8 months. We're actually talking on the November the 26th for reference. So you actually set out 8 months ago, didn't you?
We did. It's our trail anniversary.
How about that? So how are you feeling? I mean, I know you've had the breaks. How are you feeling after all this time on the trail? Do you feel like you've lost your other life? I mean, how are you feeling? 8 months is a long time.
It feels weird.
It does. We're feeling, I think right now we have mixed feelings. Like if the weather weren't getting colder, I could see being out here maybe even a little bit longer. But with the weather getting colder, I'm definitely getting to the point where it's like, okay, I've had a blast, but I'm ready to finish and start planning my next adventures the way that I feel at this point.
Yeah. I feel like I'm tired of walking, but I'm not ready to go home.
Isn't that an interesting difference, eh? It really is. So how are you feeling physically exhausted? Because that amount of time on the trail must accumulate a stress on your body. And how are you holding up physically?
Well, I think we're both really tired and sore. We've actually been picking up miles recently and doing, like, we usually only do about 14. Now we're doing about 16, 17.
Right.
But we're getting tired. And in the cold nights, I don't sleep well anymore. So I think we're both just getting really tired.
Well, and when we first spoke about this a couple of weeks ago, actually, I think you're about 300 odd miles from the end. Where are you now? Because you must be fairly close to the end now, aren't you?
We are 94 miles from finishing.
Oh, you can do that in 2 days.
Yeah.
So 94 miles from finishing. So you are where right now then? Don't worry, this is not going to go out on the 26th, obviously. It's going to go out either this week or the week after.
We're currently in Daleville, so we will finish at Angel's Rest in Petersburg.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what date that will be? Have you planned those miles?
No.
Well, it's gotten delayed because luckily enough, there's a hiker Thanksgiving in Irwin.
Right.
And Another hiker named Pink Panther is going to give us a ride down there, and then the legendary Fresh Ground is going to make sure that we get back up here.
Oh, so, that's wonderful.
Isn't that amazing? We're so excited.
Yeah.
So that's going to delay us a couple of more days, but we figure at this point, what the heck, it doesn't really matter.
Oh, my gosh. That is heck of a long time to be doing this. It really is.
Yep.
Well, when I originally wanted to do this, I knew that I didn't want to rush it. I wanted us to enjoy it and experience everything. And I can honestly say, I think we've done that. So mission accomplished.
Yeah, I suppose so. Has the trail been as you'd imagine it would be? Because you mentioned that you've wanted to do this for some time, Colleen. Who decided they wanted to do it, or did you say you wanted to do it and Julianne said she'd join you, or was it vice versa?
I told her of my plan last summer. I told all my kids. I think they thought they knew I'd been dreaming about the Appalachian Trail for a long time, but I think they thought I was completely off my rocker, and they're like, oh, she'll never do it. And when I started fixing my house up to get it ready to sell, because I sold my house and quit my job,
that'll do it.
I think they started exactly. Yeah. They started taking me seriously. And I invited Julianne and my youngest son, Jack, to come with me. And first she said no, and he said no as well. And then they both decided to come. And at the last minute, Jack kind of backed out.
Yeah.
Is he regretting that now, or does he wish he'd come?
I think he is.
Yeah.
I think he is. But, there are other adventures we can do. So,
yeah.
Have you been doing this sort of thing before then, or is this a real one-off for you? Because you say this is your first long-distance hike, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's our first real. We backpacked once or twice where we could walk back to the car, so I don't even really count that.
Yeah.
We've done a lot of car camping. I took the kids on a lot of car camping trips when they were younger. We've done a lot of that, but not backpacking.
And has the trail been as you'd imagine it would be? Because you've thought about this for some years, you said. And so have you been reading about it or just following the YouTube channels? I mean, how do you get your perception of what the trail is like before you actually get out there?
I read everything I could get my hands on. I did a lot of research online. I watched a lot of YouTube videos. And, you've done this twice. I don't think there's anything that can prepare you for what it's actually like out here. But I have to say, it's not what I expected, but in an entirely good way. It's been so much more than I could have ever hoped for.
Mm-hmm.
It is amazing. You have this perception of what it's going to be like. And my perception literally went out the window the very first day. I had no idea how to, I didn't prepare for it properly. Did you do much physical preparation before you got on the trail?
No. Absolutely not. She was working like 3 jobs to save up her money, and I was a night shift RN.
Yeah.
So there was no time to do any physical preparation, hence why it's taken us 8 months to finish.
Yeah. I actually injured myself 3 months or 2 months before we were supposed to go on the trail. So I was not able to do any physical activity for about 10 weeks. So I winged it. We both winged it.
Yeah.
Did you quit your job as well then, Julianne?
I did. I quit in December. So I quit a few months before we left out on trail.
And what were you doing?
I was a government accountant. So I audited government agencies.
Oh, that must have been a laugh. So you are sorry. So you're, and I love this, by the way, and I've said this to a number of people. Recently, people have just been prepared to quit their jobs because they think their skills are transferable and they get another job. And I'm sure you're quite right as well. So you've got no fear for the future when you get back. You'll just go back and find another job, will you?
Yeah, I think so. Just accounting you can do a lot with it.
I'm sure.
Too many problems, yeah.
So how did the two of you work out your gear choices? If this is something you didn't know about, and even though you've read about it a lot and you see on YouTube, it's very easy on YouTube, particularly, to make wrong decisions, isn't it? And you have to trust somehow that what you're doing and what you're seeing is correct. What sort of method did you guys use to get kitted out?
We watched a lot of YouTube videos, and I had a friend that did the AT last year, and I talked to him a bunch about it. But I switched out a lot of gear.
Right.
Did you switch out a lot of gear?
Yeah, I ended up with, I started with a ULA pack, which I like the pack itself, but I ended up with the wrong size hip belt because I didn't measure myself properly. So I ended up with a new pack. Of course, we've tried several different types of shoes. I watched YouTube videos, and then I actually talked with the person who inspired this in me years and years ago, because I have a friend that hiked the ATA back in 1975.
Right.
And then he hiked again last year, and he was a really good person to bounce ideas off of. And so, and I think you have to get out here, and it's trial and error. And because we weren't able to do any shakedown hikes, we had to change some things up while we were on the trail.
So what was it that first moment as you're standing up there ready to go? What were you thinking when you set up? I've got the right gear, or let's just see how this works out.
I was like, I have way too much food right now.
I kind of was like, I wasn't really afraid of having the wrong pieces of gear, because I figured, just like being able to work out the physical capabilities on the trail, I knew that, I could get more gear along the trail. So it wasn't really something that worried me a whole lot.
Yeah. So you got going, you start heading north, you're walking down that scrubby little path out of Springer. And what were you thinking as you took those first steps?
I was just kind of shocked that I was actually out there.
Right.
It took so many months of planning to where, like, it kind of didn't hit me until I was physically on the trail that I was going to do the trail.
Yeah, it was kind of surreal. It was very surreal. It didn't feel like it was actually happening.
It is a strange moment, that walk. I know that when I did it this time, I just suddenly felt right at home because I'd done it before. But I remember the first time, I was a nightmare. I banged my head in the first step, and also I missed I missed the very first shelter. So in the first about a quarter of a mile, I got lost and I banged my head. So it wasn't a great start for me. But everything that happens around you, you're just learning, aren't you, straight away?
Yes, you are. It's a completely different environment. It really is.
Yeah, but once you get going, you kind of get into it. So how long did it take the two of you to get into the rhythm of the hike? Did you find you did it together, or did one of you become more accustomed quicker?
I feel like together it didn't take a long time. The actual hiking part took a long time, but everything else just kind of came pretty quickly to us.
Did you enjoy it straight away?
Absolutely, yeah.
All right. And what is it about the trail that made you enjoy it straight away?
We both love the outdoors, and we're big nature lovers. We've been extremely lucky with the weather.
That helps. It
did rain on our first day, but honestly, we have hiked through some rain, and we've had, some miserable days just like everyone does. But for the most part, there are very few views that we have not seen, and we have had gorgeous weather. I'd say 90% of the time. And that made a huge difference, especially for me, because I'm kind of like a cat. It's like, if I want to be wet, I want to be wet, but otherwise, I don't want to be out.
Yeah. There's absolutely no time I ever want to be wet other than the shower. For me, getting off the trail whenever it was going to rain was how it worked out for Trigger and me. And I'm really glad we did it that way. And you're right. There's nothing better than hiking in decent weather, isn't it? It can be cold if you like, but if it's not raining, that's pretty decent weather as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm always the one, anytime I see rain in the forecast, I'm like, we could take a 0 that day.
This is why you needed Julianne to do the logistics. Yeah. And keep moving on.
I'm definitely the lazier hiker of the two of us.
Yeah. Now, we actually met, all three of us, briefly on the trail. And I think it was Andover. I believe it was in Andover. And I met Julianne on the road, sitting on the road for some reason with a bunch of other people. And when she found out I was Mighty Blue, she said, "Say hello to my mum. Could we listen to the podcast?" And I understand that you were crying after you met me, but it clearly wasn't my magnetic personality. What actually happened? Why were you crying after you met me?
I was crying before I met you because it was. We had gotten up at 3:00 that morning because you were getting off the Human Nature Hostels shuttle, and we were trying to get down there to it.
Oh, right.
It had rained the day before, I believe, and everything was wet, and I had to go down I had to go climb down some rebarb, and At that point, I tell you, I had just had it with Nate.
You were very pleasant to me, so it didn't show.
Well, I was so happy to see you. Like, you totally brightened my day. Because I was going down the trail just like, I've had enough of this.
Yeah, well, actually, that was going to be my next question. Actually, how did you find the terrain in the north? Because in general, after the south, it's so much of an eye opener, isn't it?
It really is. I thought I was going to die in Maine.
It was stressful.
It was stressful.
Everybody talks about the Virginia blues, but I hit the blues in Maine. It was so challenging mentally and physically.
Well, and I don't think it helped that we had taken 3 weeks off, and our very first day back on the trail, we were climbing Katahdin.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. That is bad planning, by the way. That is bad planning.
I have to say I have the utmost respect for the Southbounders because they have it rough. They really do.
Yeah.
I agree. So you took your time off the trail for your son's wedding. Did either of you say you're off for 3 weeks? That is a heck of a long time. Did either of you have second thoughts about getting back on, or did one of you, and perhaps because going to leave the other one to go hiking by themselves?
No.
Not at all.
we're crazy. We just dived right back into it. And I have to say, we did, while we were on break, we did come to Virginia, or no, it was Tennessee, and we hit a couple of sections that we had missed. So we did a little bit, but nothing that would prepare you for Katahdin.
No,
sure.
And there is nothing that can compare you to Katahdin. But you must have seen. I'm quite interested actually how you feel about it, because, as you know, for the northbounders, it is the end of the trail, and to me, that's why I wanted to go northbound. How did you feel climbing Katahdin? Did it feel like just part of the way through, or did it feel a very epic climb itself?
I did not expect it to be the way it was. I thought it was really fun because I'm a rock climber, so all of that bouldering was fun, but 2 miles of bouldering it was a little crazy, but I think Katahdin's just, compared to the rest of the trail, it just felt really different just because just getting to the top of that sign's just like one of the most important parts of the trail. So I definitely think it just gives you a whole different feeling, and kind of starting up there versus finishing there, it just felt weird, but I'm glad we did it that way.
Yeah, I would highly recommend a flip-flop hike, because I think you end up getting the best of everything. But it felt completely epic to me. I did start worrying because it was taking us so long to get up there, and I was getting really stressed out about making it back down below tree line.
Yeah. But
it was very epic. I call it my worst day and my best day on trail.
It was funny, actually. I took longer to get down than I did to get up. It took 5 hours to get down and just over 4 hours to get up. And I think it's because it is so darn difficult and exhausting, isn't it?
It is. It really is.
It took us 14 hours.
Round trip, yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's okay.
Not pleased with them.
It's not going anywhere, is it? So, it doesn't really matter how long it takes you to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now you're near the end, and so you must have just, if you're going south, you must have just done. In fact, you haven't done Tinker Cliffs, McAfee Knob, and Dragon's Tooth yet, have you? You're doing that next.
No, I have not.
Oh, that's gonna be beautiful for you.
Yeah,
we're so excited. We actually had planned on
finishing
at McAfee Knob, but we've decided just to hike on down to Harrisburg. So we were going to flip down to Harrisburg and then hike north, but we've just decided logistically it'll be too complicated, so we're just going to finish at Harrisburg.
All right. Okay.
But we're really excited for that section.
But as I said, now you are near the end with 90-odd miles to go. I'm sure you got lots of stories about your journey, and I'm sure they're going to be returning to you as time goes on. But is there one moment, or even just one person, which stands out as a real highlight of your trip so far?
I'd have to say one of our funniest moments on trail was when we were having lunch by a waterfall. Mm-hmm. And there was a gentleman there. He was kind of napping on the rocks, and he had 2 dogs that were running around. And we sat down and, we're preparing our lunch, and a lady walked up, and she had a house cat strapped to the top of her backpack.
Oh, my God.
Which we're like, and we're in the middle of nowhere. And we started laughing, and we're kind of elbowing each other. And she put her pack down, and the next thing you know, she pulls another cat out of the backpack. And at this point, we just lost it, and that cat was the angriest looking animal I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, no.
And then the cat proceeded to go into a rock crevice and would not come out.
I'm sure. You probably damaged the
really
cat for life.
Yeah, they were trying to get it to come out of the crevice by like trying to lure it with tuna, and they were taking their cook pots and pouring water down the crack.
And the cat would not come out, and we're like, "Is there anything that we can do to help you?" No, the cat does this all the time.
Oh my God! Dear way.
Yeah, so that's definitely a story that sticks out in my mind.
So that's your highlight. What about a low light, Julianne? Do you ever have there been moments when you have thought not so much about giving up, but when things were really tough?
The 100-mile wilderness was probably one of my toughest moments. I think there was a part when we were going through the chairbacks where I was looking at Guthook and the AWOL guide and looking how many more miles of Maine and the whites I had. And I was like, I'm not even going to make it to the whites.
Right.
And I think that was probably my lowest point. I thought that I was not going to make it past the 100-mile wilderness.
Well, to be fair, you really didn't give yourself the easiest task by having that 3 weeks off, because, it's funny, isn't it, how quickly you lose the conditioning that a through hike gives you.
Oh, yeah. And then when you add mosquitoes and black flies.
Yeah, I'm sure. So you had everything going against you at that time, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So where is the precise point that you're going to finish? You are going to walk into Angel's Rest. That is where you started from, or where you finished from Georgia to Petersburg?
Yes.
How are you feeling as you're approaching the end then? Are you excited, or are you sad that it's going to be over? I mean, what are you thinking now?
I think it's both.
Absolutely. Like, one minute I feel, excited, but when I think about not being on the trail anymore, I get all teared up, like really? I'm doing right now.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I get really teared up about it.
Why is that, do you think?
It's such a life-changing journey. And I think the best part of the journey is all the incredible people that you meet on the trail. It totally restores your faith in humanity being out here.
Yeah. We've met some great people.
Yeah, I'm sure you have. And I'm sure a lot of people who don't hike or haven't hiked probably rolling their eyes a little bit, because everyone says it's the people, but the reason they say it's the people because it is the people, isn't it? How kind everybody is to you. They just want to. They're happy to share all the time. They're happy to help, and nobody really thinks of their own journey almost ahead of yours. They'll help you achieve your dream as much as they want to achieve their own dream. That
is so true, and everybody. I find that it would be an amazing world if everyone could be as selfless, out in the quote unquote real world as they are on the trail.
Yeah. How about you, Julianne? What are you going to miss about the trail? Is it the people, or is it just the whole experience?
I think the community and kind of the freedom, being able to wake up and, not have to go to an office, or just being surrounded by friends and what I consider like family all the time. I think it's going to be hard. And also, I think going southbound and being so slow, we're not around a lot of people. Yeah. We don't see many hikers. I think going back home, where I'm going to be in a house full of 5-6 people, that's going to be really, really strange to me, because I'm used to being by myself or with my mom. I think it's going to be kind of a big transition to go from, seeing not many people at all to being around people 24/7.
Yeah, it can be overwhelming for the first few days, I can tell you. I felt it myself. And so what have you missed most about not being on the trail? In other words, what is it in real life that you've missed? Or is it nothing?
I would say nothing. I miss my dog, and that's about it.
Oh, my gosh.
Well, I miss my family, too, but I think I don't really miss the regular life that I had before I went on the trail.
So are you daunted by returning home then? That's a strange, that's almost a strange thing to say, because, most people don't live their life on the trail all the time. Is your experience, you're going to take something from this experience to imbue your so-called real life with something different?
Yeah, I think so. When I decided to do the trail, I pretty much did the same thing as Peaches. I got rid of everything. I had someone take over my lease, and I pretty much got rid of all of my furniture and stuff so that I would force myself to move somewhere new when I got off the trail. And that's what I'm going to do when I get back and kind of get back up on my feet. I'm going to move somewhere totally different and kind of just start fresh.
How are you going to celebrate when you finish?
I'm probably going to give my dog a very giant hug.
How about you, Peaches? Sorry, Colleen. how are you going to celebrate when you finish?
Well, I'm going to head back to Cincinnati and hang out there for my youngest son's birthday, spend the holidays there because my oldest son and his wife are coming in for Christmas. And then I'm moving to Augusta, Georgia.
Oh, wow.
I grew up in Georgia, and I'm ready to head back south. We're really excited about that. I'll only be I think about 3 hours from the trail. I'll be about 3 hours from the ocean, and I'll be in better weather than Ohio. So that's my plan. That's my short-term plan. My long-term plan is to find a way to get an RV, and I want to just start hitting the national parks, and I just want to travel.
And has the trail done this to you, or was this within you already? Because I often ask people, what have they taken away from the trail? Some people have learned confidence in themselves. They've learned their ability to manage different situations. Have you both taken something like that away from the trail? Or has it actually informed what you're going to do in your next life, as it were?
I think the trail for me has it's made me braver. For all the reasons that I decided to come out here. The trail has just reinforced the fact that it's kind of the same philosophy, I guess, as hike your own hike. It's live your own life. You don't have to be confined to just this one little box. And I'm ready to not only open my box, but just blow completely out of it.
Wow.
I think I'm a gypsy at heart, and I totally plan to explore that side of myself. And I'm hoping nothing holds me back from that.
But you're going to go back to work?
Well, I have to.
Oh, okay.
I have to go back to work. I worked in acute rehab, so I worked with a lot of patients with stroke and brain injury and recovering from physical injuries. I don't want to go back to bedside nursing, but there's a lot of different aspects of nursing. I'm hoping to find something possibly that I can do online where I can travel and work and explore at the same time.
And have you had the same impact on your life, Julianne, with this hike?
I think so, yeah. I think it's taught me that I don't really, I guess I wasn't really a materialistic person as much before the trail, but I think that it's taught me I can live life way simpler than I thought I could when I was in college and after graduating. And I don't really want to go back into the same field, but I definitely want to be more adventurous.
Yeah.
Not stay in the same place for the rest of my life. I definitely want to go experience different cultures and different trails maybe. And
I think that's a lovely long-term impact that the trail has had on you. And I think, if you get that from this, what a life-changing experience that will have been for you. So I think that's great. And do you think the two of you are going to be hiking together again?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. My oldest son and his wife are, they're planning on hiking they're applying for their JMT permit, and they've invited all of us to come with them.
Yeah.
I know you had some difficulty with the altitude
twice
there. I'm wondering if I might run into the same thing because I do have asthma. It's mild, but I could see that being an issue for me. So I'm thinking about that. I'm definitely thinking about the Camino in the future. And definitely going to be some hiking in my future. I think the Camino might be right up my alley, hike and then go to a hostel.
Sure. Well, there's one last thing I want to talk to you about, and particularly as it's two women hiking together, and we spoke about this, when we talked about the recording. And I know that two of you were in Hot Springs when the murder that happened on the trail took place this year.
Mm-hmm.
Did it give you pause at the time, or did you even consider stopping?
We did not consider stopping. I think it kind of freaked us out a little bit, though. We were definitely like a little more aware of our surroundings afterward.
Sure. And what advice would you give women, particularly women, who may be a little tentative about hiking next year? Because I presume you've gone on and you felt safe still?
Yeah.
We have. We felt very safe. Thank goodness there's not been a situation where we are aware of our surroundings. I do carry pepper spray on me. I think I could go real ninja very fast with my trekking pole, especially if somebody were messing with her.
You sound like you could actually, Colleen, I got to tell you. Batshit crazy actually springs to mind.
I could totally do that. I am a Southern woman, and we are known to go crazy. But no, I would just say I believe that the trail is probably safer than any strip mall that you could go into or any other public situation that a woman can put herself in. You just have to be aware of your surroundings. And if someone makes you uncomfortable, always go with your gut. Get out of that situation.
Yeah.
Scream, yell, do whatever you need to do to get attention. If somebody makes a move on you, or if you feel uncomfortable, and you just have to protect yourself, and just be aware. I would recommend carrying some pepper spray, but we felt very comfortable out here, and as time has gone on, we felt more and more comfortable. But we don't let our guard down. We pay attention. I don't even know if she knows this or not, but when we head out of town, I'll usually check to make sure no one's behind us or following us or anything else. And that's just the mom in me. And but it's been wonderful, and I would highly recommend any females who want to take this journey. Please do it. You won't regret it.
Even if you're by yourself, there's so many people out here that you'll connect with.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you said that. This has been a sad year for what happened, obviously mainly for Stronghold himself. But, it doesn't mean the trail is necessarily any less safe. So I'm glad you said that. And you're right. Everybody has to be aware of their surroundings, for God's sake, these days. So, you just have to be aware of where you are and try to stay in a situation that you feel comfortable, and don't put yourself in a position that you don't want to be in.
Exactly. And I think you have to trust your gut. You really have to trust. If you're feeling uncomfortable, there's a reason for that.
Sure. I agree. All right. Well, look, it's been lovely talking with you. Lovely to have had the chance to meet you. And I just hope that you'll just let me know, drop me a line to let me know that you've finished. You've got 90 odd miles. Should take you about another 4 weeks by the sound of things. But no, you got your 90 odd miles. Just send me a text or something that you finish, and I'll tell people on the show. It'd be really nice to let them know.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. This has been a treat.
Take it easy. Bye. They are really loving their time on the trail together. As someone once said, the last one to Katahdin wins. They may not be ending in Katahdin, but they're proving the truth that hiking the AT, or any trail, isn't a race. You should spend as long or as short a time on the trail as you wish. I loved hearing how much they were enjoying taking their time. It was great to hear from them, and I thought you might like an update from Tuesday, 3rd of December. The ladies are now less than 45 miles from the end, and they expect to finish this Friday. Well done, girls. I hope the moment is all that you want it to be. Jim Gregory was a great host for me earlier this summer when I turned up at his hostel, Boots Off. I was able to contact Jim this week, and here he is talking about one of the hostels I most enjoyed this year on the trail. Here's Jim. Well, we're on today with a guy I met back near Hampton, Tennessee. I think it's Tennessee. It's Jim Gregory. Hi, Jim. How are you?
Good. How you doing? And that is correct. It is Tennessee. Right?
I hadn't made the note of that, but yeah, I knew it was Hampton somewhere. And you run the amazing Boots Off, and I know that a lot of my friends I met on the trail talked very, very fondly of Boots Off. Are you actually a hiker, or were you a hiker?
Well, I'm an outdoor enthusiast. I can tell you that. I mean, I do obviously a lot of hiking, day hiking. I have not done the trail though. I mean, I've done a few small sections.
Right.
But I do enjoy, of course, I got the lake. We have the lake right next to us, Watauga Lake, so I enjoy the kayaking, paddleboarding, and, I'm just like to be immersed in the outdoors. That's one reason why I kind of bought something out in the woods.
Yeah, well, that was it. How did you actually come to own a hostel? Because that's a real challenge for a lot of people, I'm sure. What got you started on the idea of owning a hostel?
Well, and that's exactly it. It was a challenge, and it wasn't even like, I know a lot of people hike the trail, and it's like, oh, I think hostel is great, and they see a spot that could use it or something, and then they come up with something. Mine was a little bit different. And long story short, I ended up helping my dad through the dying process of cancer, and that actually got me to move out of the career I was basically of middle management, running other people's companies and logistics, just all sorts of positions like that. And life I realized was too short to do just something for the money. I needed to enjoy it, Sure. And so I worked my way into a kayaking gig that maybe gave me some self-confidence, and then I wanted to do something bigger and better. And it was the magic of the trail, I think, that I found this place that everything took out. I mean, it was literally looking at Google Maps and finding a property near a body of water that I wanted to do some kayaking, and then this one happened to have the trail.
So, yeah, it's absolutely perfectly located for a hostel, isn't it? Because it's just down that long run down from, is it Pond Flats? I can't remember the name of the flats.
Yes, correct.
Yeah,
exactly.
Pond Flats, yep. That long run down, and it's literally only about a couple of 100 yards off the trail, isn't it?
Yeah, no, exactly. It's about 1/10 of a mile to the bottom of the driveway, about another 1/10 up the driveway. So
yeah, was it already a hostel? Was it a hostel when you found it, or was it just a private home?
It was a private residence. Actually, it was a rundown, dilapidated residence. I mean, the guy bought it in 2008 right at the peak of the market right before everything crashed, and in the whole industry in the U.S. So that basically he bought it pretty high. He ended up putting a bunch of money and had some ideas, but not a hostel at all. He put money into just making like a cabin retreat. He's from California.
Right.
There's a second home on the property, but long story short, it was in disrepair, really. I mean, it needed a lot of work, and the forest was taking it back over. And but I saw the location, and since I already was like, I knew location. I also wanted a body of water. And then with the trail right there, I was like, you know what, I'm willing to take the risk and do a little more work than originally anticipated to set it up, and it was just a kind of a fluke. Once I saw the trail, because I knew a little research about, the AT. I thought about doing it off and on throughout my life also, but again, money, time, just like so many other people, the typical problems you have. Yeah. But I knew there was money there from a business standpoint. I was like, you know what, and I like helping people. I think that, I've always been, and then also been a pretty good host with my friends. So I started looking at all these and seeing what a hostel really was. And I actually never saw a hostel on the trail until several months after I started one, to be honest.
So you really found, you decided what you thought hikers would like, or did you speak to other hikers? Because the way you've set it up, and I can tell you from my experience now, I've only done this trail twice, it works out. It just works really well. Those little guest houses, the central focal point where everyone meets and gets their, you get your provisions, the fire pit, all those things just really, really work. So how did you get the idea for how to build that up? I appreciate you asking that, because actually it's amazing, actually, because I couldn't plan. I had a rough idea for a business plan. Like, I didn't have a lot of the details. I didn't have a lot of the information, but I knew from, obviously, I'm college educated. I knew certain things like, okay, you listen to your customer, you ask the right questions. If you know some basic business principles, which unfortunately some people lack that, and yes, they go into doing something and it's a big mess. I had that as my background, and then I started talking to the hikers. So I had an idea. I've talked to a few local people, who knew some stuff about the trail. My British friend, Neil Clements, he helped me with the bunkhouse. He was actually the first one to have some time. He was, he's a big outdoor enthusiast too. He's not necessarily an Appalachian Trail hiker, but he knows a thing or two and loves the outdoors. But he took time out of his busy schedule, and he was going to work with me for just a couple of weeks, and he started to fall in love with everything, and he was here for like 2 or 3 months, and then it's just amazing how when the hikers came in, we just asked the right questions. We're like, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? Yeah. What do you recommend? What have you seen? It wasn't until I started doing shuttles several months later, I started to figure out the shuttle thing. I was like, oh yeah, I can add this. I see a need for it. And that's how the business plan kind of came along. When I saw a need, I was like, I knew I was going to add the kayak rentals. I knew I was going to, shuttles. And I saw a need for a little resupply store.
But anyways, that's when I started seeing other hostels, and that's when I started to realize, oh, maybe we're onto something here. I didn't realize that we're just different. That's all. Everybody can do a hostel how they want. There's a lot of them that work in many different ways,
Yeah, you actually offer a number of different things, which is interesting. I stayed in those lovely little mini 1-person or 2-person cottages. There's also a converted bus. I seem to remember the purple people were there when I was there, and they stayed in the bus. If you remember the purple people dressed in lilac, dressed in lilac the whole time, and you've got those great outdoor showers. It just works, and I think I noticed this time from going last time, there's definitely a desire for people to get. And I'm not saying it's super upscale, but it's much more upscale than a lot of the places were, because people want that little bit more comfort, don't they?
Well, yes, exactly, and we were shooting for that. And again, I attribute that to my friend Neil. He actually was the one who started pushing, like in the bunkhouse. He's like, you know what, Jim? I wanted like the lights and the charging out. He's like, let's add the curtains and we can color code them, and then we'll put the back wall. And I was like, oh, I love it, And then he's like, we talked about like, should we use linens? We use like a light linen. We use the fitted sheet. We give you a blanket, of course, pillow. We have all the protectors like you're supposed to. We don't give a top sheet necessarily. I mean, we will if you request it, of course, but we just don't put it on there because we try to keep the cost down and minimize laundry. But we bleach everything. Some of the stuff was just like, I would say common sense. You just look at the industry and be like, what do people do for good sanitary practices? Okay, you have protectors on the mattresses, and then you also, which some of that is by code, but they're also using linens and then bleaching your linens. I mean, just little things. The attention to detail is the best way to put it. I'm kind of a particular guy, but I think people that are particular when they come in here see those details and are like, oh, this is great. And then the people that aren't as particular come in here and just are just happy with the way things work. Now, we're not perfect either. We don't have a TV. I did that intentionally not to have a TV. So to bring people together in that common area, you were talking about the deck, the kitchen, and the bonfire pit. People can come in and do their thing, socialize, kind of keep the sound contained to one area, and then, of course, people can come and go to other areas of the property if they have a campsite or one of the tiny cabins or the bunkhouse. They can get away and have quiet time too.
Yeah, I think actually having all those different choices to stay in different places and different levels of place, I think was excellent. I really did. And when I was there, you were considering selling burgers or some food, some cooked food. Did that develop, or are you going to develop that further?
It is still something I want to develop. And in fact, we've priced it. We've kind of done things too. What we were just saying was like our price points on things like, okay, I want people to share in everything, even if you're on a budget. So, $12 tenting, you get the shower, the town shuttle run, you get the light breakfast in the morning, coffee, donuts, cereal, fruit and milk and all that. You get quite a bit for the money, but then you got your bunkhouse, then you got your tiny cabin, so you can work your way. I plan on eventually doing some sort of, I was hoping maybe a food truck. I'm not quite sure which way, because it's going to be tricky. Like about 6 months out of the year, I could keep it going, just like the other hostels run into problems where you don't have as many people certain parts of the time of the year. But if I have a space that I could easily put a truck or a little trailer or something, and people could walk right up, buy the food, and then boom, take it over to the common area, eat it. I mean, it's still in the works. And then the other thing is I also plan on, a long-term plan is to add a few tree houses, probably a little bit nicer done, charge a little bit more money. And I think that's kind of going to complete I could do a lot more. I could move off site even and rent the whole place. But you know what? I like the personal touch. I want to be here on site. There's a lot of reasons why. I can
tell you from my experience, that made a big difference. You were very involved with everybody there, which I really liked as well. That really meant a lot to most of the hikers there. And also when I was there, I remember one of the hikers thought he'd ever go out fire dancing. I don't know if you remember that night. And I think he'd had maybe 1 or 2 drinks too many. I think he struggled a bit with it. I think he burnt his back a bit. You remember?
Oh, I do remember that. Yeah.
That was hilarious.
I don't remember that well, but yeah, there were some good times, and we do try to keep it fun. And I always tell the staff and other people helping out. And we have a lot of van campers, volunteers that just come and go, and especially in busy season, that want to pitch in and a place to stay for a couple nights. But the premise is this: I tell everybody, people coming in, obviously they're usually generally pretty happy to get where they're going. They're either hikers. I do Airbnb. I have drive-in. Right. So people are either on vacation, whatever it is, they're getting in a positive, happy state, and they're looking forward to a lot of times coming to the place they're going to. So all we got to do is seal the deal. We got to, what do they need? Don't try not to sweat the small stuff. Try not to be, and we also work hard at, because I tell everybody, you know what, I didn't do this just for the money. I mean, there's people that come in that need help. We just help them. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to, you don't have to do work for stay. Sometimes people come in and just need to get out here this time of year and they're freezing cold. They're like, I don't have a lot of money. You know what? Just get in the bunkhouse, warm up, and we worry about the rest of that later. That's the type of thing I felt that what I've heard from hikers is that they appreciate that you do care a little bit too. You're not just a number, you're not just trying to get money from them,
Sure. I think it's a wonderful addition to the trail. I genuinely thoroughly enjoyed myself there. So how can people get hold of you to book for next year? I know they wouldn't book now, but do they just call you or do they email you? What's the procedure?
I try to keep all lines open, and I am actually, we grew a lot faster than I anticipated, so I had some ideas of where we would go, and then all of a sudden we blew up. So I'm a little bit behind on where I want to see myself, to be honest with you, with like a good website and then a real good check-in system. I mean, registration, the whole works, reservation registration system, one that works seamlessly, that's nicely done, and none of this pieced together crap that I've seen before, just because, but I'm not, instead of rushing it, I'm taking my time. I have somebody professionally help me out. And, but in the meantime, we still take pretty much any form of communication, email, Google message, Facebook message, text message, phone call. Right. It all comes basically into I'm pretty organized, systematic like that. And then I go through every day and return calls. It baffles me when I hear people are just like, it's like maybe my rule is within 24 hours usually or quicker. And people are like, oh, thank you for calling me back. It's just, I'm like, what do you mean? Like, shouldn't people be calling you back? And I guess that's something wrong in the industry there. I know online booking is popular. That's why we are on Airbnb right now. So hikers can actually go on there and line up ahead of time. The prices are pretty much the same. Right. There's not any huge benefit one way or the other. And sometimes we run specials on Airbnb. So hikers that are interested could, who like the online booking can do a bed in the bunkhouse. They can do a cabin. The only thing they can't do right now is the camping online, but we have a lot of space. So. Right. Well,
I presume you're in all the guidebooks. You're in gut hooks and all those things, aren't you?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's when people will find them anyway. I won't give them your phone number over here now because you might start getting phone calls right now. So you don't need those. Don't need those yet. But So I really thoroughly enjoyed it, Jim, and I really appreciate you talking to us about it.
Oh no, I appreciate you taking the time out, and you're a wonderful guest, and I hope you'll find time to get back here someday.
That'd be cool. Appreciate it. Well, don't tell me when I go for a third time. Yeah, let's see how that works out. Okay, man. Well, good to talk to you.
All right, good talking to you too. Thank you.
Take it easy. Bye.
Bye.
I tell you, that is a great place, and I highly recommend you give it a try when you hit the trail any time in the future. You will not be disappointed. I got an email from a fellow Brit this week. His name is Bob Cartwright, and he runs a site called The Outdoors Station at, not surprisingly, theoutdoorsStation.co.uk. The site has got a mix of long-distance hiking diaries in the UK and conversations with others who do similar things, whether it's in UK, Europe, or even further afield. It's well worth looking at if you have an interest in hiking abroad, which in fact I will be doing next year when I hit the West Highland Way in Scotland. Thanks for reaching out, Bob. I know that many of you already know and are supporting our new show, but Just a Section Hiker finally hit the airwaves this week. This is a Section Hikers podcast, and there is a bit of a clue in the title, and has been really well received, not only from people who hike on the AT, but also the Pacific Crest Trail, two such separate hikes, and people do sectional hikes on both. So it'll be interesting to hear the different perspectives on the two different trails, and in fact any other trails that are out there. Julie will be putting out shows on the 1st and 15th of each month, though she's already hounding me about some extra shows in the near future. So I'm going to have plenty of work on my hands with that. We had a bit of a glitch when Apple Podcasts hadn't approved the show by last Sunday, the 1st of December, but everything's fine now and the show will be available on all your normal platforms. If there is a place that you get your shows and you can't find the Just a Section Hiker podcast, let me know and we'll make sure that we add that destination. But remember, you can listen to all the Hiking Radio Network shows by heading to hikingradionetwork.com. Each show has its own page and there's a kind of jukebox with every single episode of each show available, making binge listening really easy. Finally today, the latest chapter in Paul Stutzman's Hiking Through finds Paul racking up the miles and leaving Virginia at last. I remember that feeling. I really love Virginia, and I certainly never got the Virginia blues, but it really felt like I was making progress when I, at last, left my 4th state and moved into my 5th, West Virginia. Great times. I'll see you next week. Chapter 14. Chasing Dreams. On the trail, I was shedding not only the stresses of my business life, but also the distractions that had kept me from truly seeing myself, others, and this hike we call life. I was learning to see what I saw. God had said he would meet me on the trail. Experiences and people that in my everyday world would have passed unnoticed now carried messages I was able to hear. I finally had time to listen and learn. Take the footbridge over the James River, for example. For many years, hikers had only one route across this river, a narrow 2-lane highway that made the crossing dangerous. A local man's vision and determination changed that for me and for every other hiker on the trail today. Bill and Laurie were a local couple who thru-hiked the Appalachian Trail and found themselves transformed into believers in the mission and vision of the AT. They became active in the Appalachian Trail Conservancy and worked as trail maintainers with their local club. Their stretch of trail included that bridge crossing the James River, and for over a decade Bill single-mindedly pursued the dream of a separate hiker bridge spanning the waters. Many times throughout those years the new bridge seemed an impossibility, but today it reaches 625 feet across the river, a testament to Bill's hard work and a series of serendipitous events. Bill saw possibilities in 5 railroad piers in the river, no longer in use, owned by a local businessman. He visited the owner and explained his dream. The owner agreed to sell. Not only did he agree to sell, the asking price was only $1. Bill had the solid beginnings of his bridge. 9 years of clearing obstacles, both financial and legal, finally resulted in the dedication of the James River Footbridge in 2000. The dedication of the bridge was also a memorial to Bill, who had died of cancer just months before and never walked across his own dream. I stood by the ridge and read the memorial plaque. Bill pursued his passions, honoured his dreams and cherished those around him. This man had not just raced thoughtlessly through his life. I compared my own life. Did I even know what my passions were? Had I let my dreams die? Would I cherish the people in my life and appreciate what they brought to me? I climbed all morning, arriving at the top of Bluff Mountain just before noon. It was my highest elevation of the day. The view was grand, but the company was even grander. At the peak I found Sailor and his son also enjoying the view. That afternoon I walked a section of the trail where rhododendron blossoms drifted down and lined the path with pink petals. I felt like royalty parading along a path of homage, or a bride floating down a petal-strewn aisle. Either notion seemed a bit ridiculous. I was just a solitary hiker wandering down God's trail through his great outdoor cathedral. Euphoria cranked up my courage. Now was the time to sample rhododendron. I plucked a nice specimen and hesitated only a few seconds before popping it into my mouth. They sure look a lot better than they tasted, I thought, as I chewed and chewed and chewed. A 22-mile jaunt through the mountains ended at Brown Mountain Creek Shelter, where I stopped for the night, happy to see that Sailor and his son were also there. Sir Enity, though, was low on food and needed to resupply. He hiked 2 more miles to US 60, where he hoped to hitch a ride into Buena Vista. There he would find a motel, buy food, and head back to the trail in the morning. The next day, I arrived at US 60 just as a truck dropped off Serenity, who brought an extra Burger King breakfast sandwich he had decided to gift to the first hiker he met, and luckily that was me. It was a good beginning to another hard day of climbing. Bald Knob and Cold Mountain both demanded strenuous effort from legs and lungs. I thought back to the day Sailor, Marathon Man and I had entered Virginia. We had anticipated easier hiking, and the springtime Blue Ridge Mountains were easier than the frozen, snow-covered Smokies. But this entire hike was far more difficult than I had ever imagined. So Enity and I set our sights on Rockfish Gap, which we hoped to reach in 2 days. The gap marks the entrance to Shenandoah National Park and is only a short distance from Waynesboro, Virginia, where we planned to make a town stop. On the top of Cold Mountain, I had cell service and called ahead to make a motel reservation. Toward evening, we crossed the small, rutted Crabtree Farm Road that cuts through the forest. A 4-wheel drive vehicle was parked near the trail, and a young couple had spread a private picnic. Serenity hesitated to crash their party, but I insisted that we at least attempt to mooch some food. It was one of the best trail magic moments of my entire trek. The couple offered bananas, carrots, tortilla chips, drinks, bread, and a complete mountain house meal that I stashed away for later consumption. The young picnickers had already given us most of their supplies, but they asked if we needed anything more. "How about a leave? Did you have any of those?" I asked. My shin splints were almost gone, but so was my vitamin I. "Sure do," the young man replied, and he poured out a handful for me. The trail magic energised us for the last climb of the day, Priest Mountain. Several hundred feet below the summit, we stopped at the priest's shelter. A church group had commandeered the building, so Serenity and I set up our tents nearby. We found entertaining reading material that night. Hikers were using the priest's register as a confessional. Records of transgressions filled the pages. The most frequent sin reported was the theft of toilet paper. During town stops, hikers often unroll a liberal amount of toilet paper to take with them for later use. Serenity and I crossed Priest Mountain in the early morning light. The day was difficult but rewarding. 24 miles took us to heights and depths. From 4,063-foot Priest Mountain, we dropped to just 997 feet at the banks of the Ty River, where we wobbled across a wooden suspension bridge that swayed like a pendulum. Then it was back uphill as we headed into the Three Ridges Wilderness area to a height of over 4,000 feet that gave us splendid views over the valleys and mountain ranges. White mountain laurel bloomed around us, and purple and white flowers flaunted their wild beauty along the path. Several graceful waterfalls coursed over rocky drops. We finally stopped on top of Hanging Rock and took a moment to imbibe the sweetness of the day. Below us lay farms and fields of the beautiful Shenandoah Valley. At our backs, honeysuckle blossoms sent out their sweet aroma. I felt fortunate, one of the privileged few who would ever sit on this spot and savour such a moment. Serenity finally convinced me to stop sniffing the flowers and get moving. The rest of our day was filled with stream crossings, log steps up and down inclines, and mountaintop experiences in the sky. We had no particular goal except to get as close to Waynesboro as possible. The sun was dropping in the sky when we reached Humpback Mountain, still 11 miles from Waynesboro. We were not stopped by darkness or our physical condition. We were halted by our surroundings. Near the crest of Humpback, the trail led over rocky outcroppings at the breathtaking edge of the mountain, with views reaching for miles over the Shenandoah Valley. Serenity voiced my thoughts. It would be fantastic to camp here and watch the day disappear over the valley. We searched for a camping area and found a grassy spot perfect for our 2 tents, just a few yards back from the jutting stone ledge. I set up Big Agnes and within minutes had water boiling for a hot meal. Hidden somewhere in the rocks, Serenity called my name. "Apostle, get over here. You've got to see this." I grabbed my food and headlamp and followed the direction of his voice. He was perched on the rocks with the world stretched out far below. I found my own seat in the grandstand, an indentation in the stone that fit my body and still held lingering warmth from the day's sunshine. We sat and watched the sunset in silence. 2 wanderers on a lonely trail, both on our own quest for peace. Among the billions of humans on Earth that night, only we 2 had these front row seats as Earth moved from day to night. The sun disappeared, and now, across the expansive valley, twilight slowly ebbed away and darkness descended. Smaller lights flickered on as folks in distant buildings lit their little worlds against the darkness. Lights were going on in my much larger world too, as the stars grew brighter. Soon there was no horizon. Sky and valley melded into one, and the entire world was blackness with tiny dots of shimmering light. The God of the universe had just ended another day in the Shenandoah Valley, moving the light on its journey westward onto other beginnings and endings. We sat in awed silence long after darkness had arrived, and then stumbled back to our tents. During the night, the local deer snorted their disapproval of the 2 invaders of their grassy spot, but we slept and rested well at the edge of the world. God had allowed 2 rock dwellers to sit ringside while he worked his majesty. I'm astounded that some folks think this all started with one big bang. The morning light glowed softly as it fell on the mountain and returned to the valley after its overnight journey. We had only 11 miles to Rockfish Gap, almost all downhill. The trail down Humpback Mountain was rocky but scenic, crossing streams and winding through the forest. The rocks ended at the bottom of a highway embankment. We'd arrived at Rockfish Gap, where I-64 and US 250 intersect. Here, too, the Blue Ridge Parkway transitions into Skyline Drive. We crossed the road to an information centre and found a list of people willing to drive hikers into Waynesboro. We chose a name, made the call, and were picked up by a lively and informative lady of 84 years who drove us to the Quality Inn, where we had made reservations. Arriving in town at noon is almost like a day off. Food, laundry and resupply were the order of the afternoon. At the laundromat, I washed every article of my clothing. Yes, even what I was wearing at the time. I stepped behind a bank of washers to avoid causing a distraction and possible arrest, shed my clothes and donned my rain gear. Across from me, a hiker emptied a food box on the floor. His big floppy straw hat and a flute lying nearby told me I had at last caught up with Padre the priest. I introduced myself. He was staying that night at a local church hostel. I wanted more time to talk with this man and hoped our paths would cross again. We ate and rested, important activities during town stops. The next morning, during breakfast at the Quality Inn, a hiker walked in, topped with a mop of brown hair I immediately recognised. Back at the Barn restaurant in Atkins, Sailor and I had been headed back to the trail when we had met this hair and the mind underneath. I reminded Einstein of our meeting and we chatted. With a name like that, you must be a deep thinker, I joked. But he was, indeed, a solemnly reflective person. I'm just out here contemplating everything I've ever been taught, he told us. Contrary to Sir Ennerty and me, Einstein had a wonderful wife who was fully alive and supportive of his quest to hike the 2,200-mile think tank. We invited him to hike with us, and now our group not only had heart and courage, we had a brain. We three joined others gathering at the entrance to Shenandoah National Park and went through the formality of filling out permits admitting us to the park. The Appalachian Trail and Skyline Drive both wander through Shenandoah National Park. The trail crosses the famous highway several times. Other times, walking high on a mountain, we would see the scenic blacktop route snaking along below us. The second day in the park, we stopped for an impromptu ceremony on Baldface Mountain. We had just completed mile 900. Serenity scrawled 900 miles on a dead tree by the trail. We admired his handiwork and signed our names, knowing the act violated the leave no trace principle of hiking, but wanting to leave a point of celebration and encouragement for fellow hikers. The park has a series of waysides, businesses located along the highway for travellers to eat, fuel and shop. We stopped at Big Meadows Wayside for lunch, where I was shocked to see gas prices had risen to over $4 a gallon. I predicted that more folks would soon be walking. Serenity was meeting his brother at Big Meadows, and they planned to hike together for several days. Einstein and I went on together, but he would meet his wife in Front Royal, and then I would again be hiking alone. The three of us made plans to meet again in Harpers Ferry a week later. That evening, as Einstein and I approached Skyland Road, I could not resist the temptation of a soft bed and a good meal. Skyland Lodge and Restaurant was just down the road, so I headed there, and Einstein planned to camp just a short distance down the trail. I would catch up with him the next day. I know I paid too much for those comforts that night, but the prime rib and blackberry cobbler sure hit the spot. The next morning, I ate breakfast with a hiker who was attempting a through hike for the third time. The previous year, he had made it to Connecticut, but then fell ill and had to leave the trail. And now, this year in Virginia, he confided to me that this was his last day. He was going to quit. I'm just so tired and lonely, he told me. He had called home and his wife told him he could come home only if he promised not to make another attempt the next year. I wanted to do it so badly, but I miss home too much. I thought again of those words. Unless it's the most important thing in your life at the time, you probably won't finish. Nearing Elk Wallow Gap, I began to look for Einstein's campsite. I had not caught a glimpse of him all day, but in the event that I didn't catch him, we had agreed to camp here at the end of the day. The area was not suitable for tenting, though. It was full of dense bushes and undergrowth. I guessed Einstein had kept on hiking, looking for a good site. The trail crossed the highway just 1/10 of a mile from Elk Wallow Wayside and more food. I was detoured by the thought of a hot dog and an ice cream bar. The treat was delicious, but the day was slipping away and I still had not found Einstein. I hurried back to the trail. Less than a mile from the gap, a trail leads off the AT to Rangeview Cabin. At this intersection, just a few feet off the trail, Einstein had set up camp. I never saw his tent and kept on hiking. Several hours and several more Skyline Drive crossings later, I was still looking for Einstein's camp. I hiked over 4 peaks on Hogback Mountain in the fading twilight and picked up my pace. The light was starting to play tricks on me. At this point in the Shenandoah Mountains, most hikers had already reported seeing bears. I had not seen any. 2 days before, I was hiking a short distance ahead of Serenity and Einstein. At a road crossing, they called for me to stop. When they caught up with me, they told me I had walked right by a large bear, less than 15 feet from the trail. I had never seen the animal, but they had even photographed it. In broad daylight, I had been unable to see a bear, but now in the fading light, I was seeing bears everywhere. tree trunks became shaggy threats, and several times I stopped in my tracks, heart pounding as I waited for the distant tree trunk bears to move away from my path. It was not just bears that lurked in the darkening evening. I saw dogs, cats and wolves, as the faint light conspired with rocks and stumps and bushes to give me the heebie-jeebies. Finally, a trail sign. With relief, I read that Gravel Springs Hut was 0.2 of a mile to the right. Surely Einstein would be there. I found my way to the shelter in the near darkness, filling my water bottle at a spring along the trail. At the front of the shelter, I peered through the shadows at hikers already in sleeping bags. "Hey, is Einstein in there?" "Not in here," came the reply. Several hundred feet past the shelter and behind the privy, a few tent sites sat vacant in the dark. No one else was here. I set up my tent and cooked my food, wondering what had happened to Einstein. A bear pole had been erected to hang food bags. It reminded me of a maypole, about 15 feet tall, with hooks protruding from the top to suspend bags high in the air. Nearby, I found a metal pole with one hooked end. I placed the heavy food bag on this hook, then lifted it unsteadily towards the hangers at the top of the maypole. It was a difficult balancing act, made even more difficult by darkness. My headlamp shone into the heavens as I waved the long pole skyward and tried to hang the dangling food bag above any bear's reach. I swayed and teetered around the pole, working to make the connection, feeling like a May dancer weaving in the May night. I imagined bears watching from the woods, laughing heartily at my antics. I awoke several times during the night, hearing loud crashing in the undergrowth around my solitary camp. I shone my light through the tent and yelled at whatever was out there. Morning arrived at last, and the shadowy bears had eaten neither me nor my food. The last day in Shenandoah National Park, I saw 5 bears. It was no wonder then that a noise crashing through the woods behind me made me jump and whirl around. Einstein came blasting up the trail. His unique hiking style had only one speed, the same velocity uphill or down. I struggled up difficult hills, but he never slowed. On this afternoon I was sure he had cranked up the speed one more notch. It was the day he was meeting his wife in Front Royal. The trail crossed US 522 at Chester Gap. Sailor and his son were also at this road crossing, trying to get a hitch into Front Royal 4 miles away. I still had 53 miles to hike in 2 days to reach Harpers Ferry, West Virginia, so I wanted to keep moving. "See you guys in a few days," I yelled to Einstein as I headed up the trail. The trail followed the southern boundary of the National Zoo. Chain fencing encircled several thousand acres, and my guidebook said that many rare and endangered animals were behind those fences. I didn't see any animals, but I did see holes in the fence that would have allowed large animals to escape. Perhaps they were all on my side of the fence by now. At 5 o'clock I arrived at the Jim and Molly Denton shelter. This comfortable shelter boasts a front deck and inviting deck chairs. I could go no further. I settled in with the intention of getting an early start the next morning. I was the only person there, so I set up Big Agnes inside the shelter. A brother and sister team doing a section hike arrived later that night, but they set up their tents nearby. A good night's sleep prepared me for my longest hiking day yet. The day started with great promise. I was on the trail soon after 5:30. The sun came up and I was feeling good. The first twist of the day came in a field where weeds growing to my shoulders crowded the path. As I pushed my way through, with only my head above the weeds, dust and pollen flew everywhere. When I came out at the end of the long field, I was coated with a layer of white dust. Half a mile later, I lost the trail in a rocky area where the white blazes seemed to have evaporated. I stumbled in circles for quite a while before finally spotting one of those small white rectangles. Once back on the trail, I could hardly believe my bad luck. I was forced into yet another field filled with those tall weeds. A second dust storm ensued as I pushed my way through the maze. At the other end of the field, I met the brother and sister who had camped at the shelter the night before. They seemed surprised to see me. "Apostle, why are you headed back to the shelter?" I had made one too many turns around that rock pile, looking for blazes, and I was hiking the wrong direction, retracing my steps of the morning. Now I had to navigate the dusty weed patch a third time. 12 miles into my day, a trail cut off to the right, leading to Sky Meadows State Park. At this intersection in the woods, someone had placed a wooden park bench, a perfect spot to take a break. I heard the warning thunder and quickly pulled my rain cover over my pack. But the day was warm, and I decided not to wear my rain gear. I would just take the shower, and hopefully the sun would soon return and dry me out. The plan worked. Sort of. The rain soon turned into a downpour. I tried to find shelter under a tree, but I was soaked through in 15 minutes. The sun did return, and I was almost dry in less than an hour. But then another downpour soaked me. 3 times I went through this wash and dry cycle. The third time the sun appeared, I was in the woods walking a downhill path, hunched against the rain striking my shoulders, when the sun sent dazzling beams of light through the trees, meeting the shimmering mist rising from the ground. The sudden brilliance lit up the woods, and I took it as a promise from God that he was finished blasting me with storms, for this day at least. In the middle of the afternoon, I stood in front of a sign welcoming me to the roller coaster. This section of the trail covers 9 miles of steep ups and downs. Before I started this hike, I read about this series of hills and imagined the fun of flying up and down these rollers on the way to Harpers Ferry. But now I noted that the welcome sign also bore this message: "Have a great ride and we will see you at the Blackburn Trail Centre, if you survive." So I was finally here, and it wasn't fun. None of the hills were extremely tall, but the cumulative elevation gain and loss rivaled many of the biggest mountain climbs on the trail. Steep upward scrambles were followed by immediate and dramatic drops, no switchbacks allowed. The roller coaster is notoriously difficult, but it's still a popular area for day hikers. I met others enjoying a spring day in the Virginia woods. I shared the trail for a time with a woman walking with 2 dogs, and every now and then I caught sight of a Boy Scout troop. But most of these folks were only doing sections of the rollers or were crossing the AT while following other trails of their own. I was single-minded, climbing and dropping, pushing myself to survive to the end and claim my reward. If I could finish this stretch, my day would cover 28 miles. But even better, my reward would be the hiker special waiting at the Bear's Den Hostel. For just $25, I could have a bed, do my laundry, and enjoy an entire pizza, a pint of Ben & Jerry's, and a can of Coke. That promise kept this weary hiker climbing and descending. It's amazing what a human being will do in pursuit of a goal. At 8:30 that evening, I stumbled into the Bear's Den Hostel. I'd hiked 28.2 miles, my biggest day thus far on the trail. I'd been completely turned around and had hiked the wrong way. I'd hiked all the killer rollers, but I was still smiling. I'd achieved my day's goal. I also had a pizza, 2 cans of soda, and a pint of Ben & Jerry's in front of me. I went to bed, exhausted, clean and full. The next day I would finish Virginia, the longest state in the AT, and enter West Virginia, the shortest state. In Harpers Ferry I wanted to visit the little church beside the trail where I had prayed for our family. But the most satisfying thought was that tomorrow I would fulfill a promise I had made to myself that day over 5 years ago while standing on the trail outside Harpers Ferry.